everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time for week 2 of AEW Dynamite. It was a pretty good debut for AEW. I thought that NXT last week was maybe a little bit better, but we'll see what happens this week. And honestly, just before we get into it, I really enjoyed this week of AEW. I thought it was a fantastic second week. I thought that it made me want to tune in next week again, which is always what you want to happen. And it was just action-packed, wasn't it? It was just bloody good. But how good was it? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. Yes, this is AEW Dynamite Graded. So we started things off with probably my favourite match of the show, to be honest. The Young Bucks versus the Private Party in the first round of the Tag Team Tournamente. And it was a really, really good match, to be fair. There was a really good little moment as well, just before the bell rang, where we saw other teams of the Tag Team division like watching from the crowd. So we saw SCU and also Angelico and Jack Evans. It made everything feel a bit alive and a bit of a whole organism where everything's interconnected. And you really want to see that. It's really nice to see that in wrestling promotions. There was also a nice hype package beforehand, which you may have seen on YouTube, where basically the Bucks are saying we're still the best tag team in the world, and the Private Party are saying we're probably the least recognized guys in this tag team tournament, but that just means we've got to prove ourselves. And pretty early on, with the Bucks going up against this younger, hungrier team, they are established as the heels of the match, really. They're very, very cocky throughout, and also at the start as well, Nick Jackson goes for a super kick several times. Isaiah Cassidy evades every one of them, so Nick Jackson's really annoyed and just spits his gum in his face, or throws it maybe. The gum ended up in face. You think Seth Rollins is impressive with 3 suicide dives in a row? Watch Mark Quinn hit 4 dives in a row, but to be fair to Mark Quinn, the crowd were right behind him because every one of the dives was a little bit different. He did like a tope, he did a suicide dive, he did that Fosbury flop style one. He was really going for it, and so was his partner Cassidy, and they really did a good job of getting the crowd firmly in their corner. Although there were some chance for the Bucks as well, because I mean the Bucks are always going to be over. This obviously was a very flippy, spotty sort of match, high paced all the way through, but there were some tactics as well, which I don't think the Bucks often get enough credit for. I remember they had a really good few matches in New Japan against the likes of Evil and Sonata, where they bring tactics and storytelling into it and long-term selling of various body parts, and I thought, you know what, they're not the sort of flippy spot monkeys that everybody says they are. That was the case in this match as well, with Matt Jackson trying to secure a 2-on-1 advantage by taking Cassidy halfway down the entrance ramp and just powerbombing him and then heading back to the ring, and Mark Quinn was left to fend for himself. A little bit later on, the Bucks also took a leaf out of the Revival's playbook with the old, run around the ring, yank the illegal member of the tag team off the apron to prevent the hot tag, that sort of thing. We love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. It looked as though the Bucks were going to win this match. They managed to kick out of all the big moves of the Private Party, but just when it looked like they were about to win, with Mark Quinn set up for the Meltzer driver, Isaiah Cassidy was able to pull Nick Jackson off the apron before he could hit his springboard, and then in the ring, Quinn rolled up Matt Jackson and picked up a monumental and very well-received victory. This gets an A. It was a blistering match to start off the show, a great match, and maybe more importantly, a great piece of booking as well, because the Bucks don't really get harmed by this defeat, but the Private Party look like $1 million. And honestly, the feel of this match was really similar to one of those opening NXT TakeOver tag team matches that we're used to seeing, which is quite ironic, isn't it? Don't you think? It's like rain! Just cut at some point in the rain, please. Thank you. Next up, Jericho hits the ring, flanked by his various cronies, Sammy Guevara, Ortiz, Santana, and Jake Hager. Ooh. Jericho loves memes, doesn't he? Because he introduces himself as Le Champion of AEW, which gets a laugh. This was a really funny promo, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Sometimes heels can be funny and you can laugh at them, but still hate them as well. And I think even though Jericho was getting cheers for a lot of his lines in this promo, the underlying feel is one of hatred towards Jericho, as would be proven later on in the main event. So Jericho introduced the various members of his faction. Let's see what he said about them. First up, Sammy Guevara. Jericho said, "He looks like a Spanish god. Look how sexy he is." Which is, brilliant. Then he talked about Santana and Ortiz. He said that he personally recruited them to AEW and he loves them because they're kind of dirty, pitbull-esque backstreet fighters. Then Jake Hager, the most crazy MMA fighter in the world today. He gets drowned out by "We the People" chants, and then Jericho breaks kayfabe slightly and says, "We the People sucks, it's dead and buried. It was a stupid idea from bad creative." Jericho then reveals the name of his group, the Inner Circle, which I find okay. It's not a brilliant name, but it's not, it's not the Viking Experience or anything. It's not terrible, and it seems to have got a bit of a mixed reception online. But I think it's fine. The Inner Circle. It's catchy, makes sense. It's Jericho's Inner Circle. What more do you want? You can't call them the Ultimate Awesome Hype Master Beast Men, can you? Well, that would be. Is it too late to change that? Jericho then goes in on Cody and the extended Rhodes family. He says that Dusty was a jerk, that Dustin is a moron, and he says that once he beats Cody, he's going to celebrate with a little bit of the bubbly. And everyone goes, yeah, we're the bad guys, you guys. But you know what? There was still a nice little touch of an Eddie Guerrero tribute in there too, because just after he'd talked about Santana and Ortiz, he said Viva la Raza. I think it was Ortiz did that thing. The crowd all gave a nice Eddie chant. So it was a nice little moment as well in what was a very strong promo. This also gets an A. I love this promo. It was really funny and good. Jericho's such a great mix of being legitimately great and then thinking he's even better than he is. And it makes for a really hilarious and effective heel character, I guess. It's really, really entertaining. I have to admit as well, last week I was really hesitant about Jake Hager being the big surprise debut because, he's a WWE superstar formerly, of course, and he just didn't seem the right sort of fit for this kind of, I guess, the direction of the company. But I have to admit, in the makeup of this group, it's pretty spot on. He's the big heavy, Santana and Ortiz are the tag team, Sammy's the young, nimble guy. If they got a woman in there as well, just to be in the women's division too, that would be great. But at the moment, Hager he's a perfect piece of the puzzle, I suppose. I was really wrong. I'm so sorry. This promo segment was so good, it actually almost got an A+, but I had to take a few points away, just because I didn't enjoy the whole breaking of kayfabe stuff. Jericho at one point said, that's a shoot, and I'm never really a fan of that. It's a little bit too Russo for me, if I can use that term. Obviously, I'm not saying this was as bad as, the worst of Russo's booking, but it always reminds me of it. It makes me uncomfortable. Next up, the number one contenders match between Jimmy Havoc and Darby Allin, the winner going on to challenge Chris Jericho next week. They started off with a couple of nice roll-up attempts and little exchanges, and maybe it was both guys trying to prove a point. We're not both just deathmatchy, hardcore style guys, we can actually wrestle too. And then Havoc started spitting and biting, and even at one point hit a falcon arrow from the apron to the floor, which looked like a horrendous bump, it looked painful, but I guess they were never going to do chain wrestling for very long. The crowd were really into it though. I was actually surprised the way this match went. A lot of it was Havoc dominating, which I guess is them trying to push the agenda that Darby is really, really resilient. I suspect we'll see more of that next week in his match against Jericho, because Darby did actually win this match. Havoc hit a tiger driver for a nice near fall, and then because Darby had got the ropes, Havoc was really annoyed and just stomped on his head. Just stomped right on his head, which is a very straightforward way to deal with your problems, I guess. But then Darby countered the Acid Rainmaker attempt with a bite of his own, and Havoc had bitten Darby's fingers several times throughout the match, so it was a nice reversal, a nice bit of, I guess, karmic retribution. Then Darby did that float over stunner kind of thing that guys do these days. Mark Andrews calls it the Stun Dog Millionaire. And then Allin hit the coffin drop and picked up a huge, big victory. A huge, big victory. Yeah, that totally makes sense, Jack. Don't worry about it. This gets a B+. It was a good mix of character work and good action in the ring. They really told the story of Darby's resiliency and Havoc's sadism. One thing I will say is I'm worried that next week's match is going to be a bit predictable because, Darby is surely going to lose. He's not going to beat Jericho, especially with Jericho going into a title match on pay-per-view against Cody. But you never know what sort of wrench they could throw in the works, I guess. Also, I'd like to see Jimmy Havoc be given a more intricate storyline. I know it's early days, but somewhere down the line, I'd like to see him be given a more intricate feud, or maybe a long-term and more intense feud. Just because fans of Progress will know that there are few better than Jimmy Havoc in that sort of situation. Next up, tag team action in the women's division as the first ever AEW Women's Champion Riho teams up with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, to take on Emi Sakura and B. Priestley. Or as Matthew calls her, Beer Priestley, because he's stupid. So mean. I'm seeing him later today. The heels, or the heels, I guess. B's definitely a heel, but Emi Sakura comes out obviously as Freddie Mercury and does things like "Ayo," and gets the crowd to go "Ayo." Or so at one stage she tried to start like a "We Will Rock You" style chant, and it doesn't. Is she a heel? She's teaming with a heel, but she's trying to get the crowd to play along. It was a dynamic that kind of threw the match off for me. But anyway, the heels did take control at the start here. Are they heels? I don't know. At one stage, Priestley and Baker brawl on the outside because they're feuding, and the referee lets them fight, even though they're fighting on the outside and it's a bit of a wild brawl. She lets them go at it, and JR commends her for doing so. He says, "Good job, referee, for being lenient. Obviously, referees can use their discretion. All officials can do this, but some of them just don't have the common sense." Jim, was that a little sneaky shot at WWE? Towards the end, Emi Sakura seems to have the better of Britt Baker, so Riho takes matters into her own hands and cuts off Sakura with, she charges into the ring and kind of catches her, does a nice Rey Mysterio-style victory roll kind of thing, and then jumps up into the double stomp, and from that moment on, the faces were in control of this one. Riho took Bea Priestley off the apron and held her back as Britt Baker finished off Sakura in the ring with a swinging neck breaker, and then kind of forgive me, I don't know the name of her submission, but it's kind of a regal stretch with a mandible claw for extra pressure on the mouth. And that was enough to secure the submission victory. Lovely babyface win. Except it wasn't a lovely babyface win because Priestley and Baker had a little bit more of a brawl after the bell. It got separated, but I think we're going to have to see these two do battle in singles action at some point, maybe with a hardcore stipulation, because they're really pushing this agenda that they hate each other. I've said pushing the agenda twice now in this video. I need to stop doing that. This gets a B- anyway. There were some good moments here, but also one or two loose moments. I thought often, and I can't put my finger on what was wrong with it, but the brawling between Priestley and Baker got a little bit, I don't know how to describe it really, but it could have been even more intense at times. I felt like often they may have been holding back a little bit. I don't know if that's just my opinion. Let me know what you thought as well. And also, I thought that it was just weird that Emi Sakura was tagging with Bea Priestley. I don't know if they've got history in Japan, although I'm not really certain. But I've just liked a storyline reason for that anyway, or for at least a bit of explanation from the commentary team. Maybe there was no reason, I don't know. Sometimes in the women's division it does feel like tag matches are a little thrown together so far. Next up, we get the best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, at ringside, and they are asked how they feel about their chances in the upcoming tag team tournament, and they say, "Don't ask us, ask this guy." And they move aside. Orange Cassidy's got a seat in the front row, and he just gives the least effort thumbs up ever. He can't even be bothered to straighten his thumb. He goes like that. I did laugh, to be fair. It was funny, but it was too short a segment, really, I think, to give a grade to. Next up, we get Shawn Spears versus Jon Moxley. Moxley was one of the most over guys on this entire show. The reception for him was absolutely phenomenal. He is just such a star, isn't he? Tully was with Spears again, which was nice to see because Tully is really doing well. He was excellent at All Out in that managerial role, and he was excellent here again. He was really one of the big highlights of this match. Another highlight of this match, if you could understand what he was saying, luckily I'm from Newcastle, so I could, was Pac on commentary, who was just really angry and bitter throughout for not getting a title shot yet, despite his excellent track record over the past 2 years, and the fact that, Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc got a shot earlier tonight, and he's not even in the picture. He was furious. He was absolutely fuming. This was a chaotic start as Moxley and Spears just got on each other's faces straight away, and then Tully tried to pull Moxley away, and Moxley just stuck a headbutt on him. It was awesome. It was really, really good because it was just like two blokes having a fight, and then one of their dads tries to stop it and just gets taken out as well. It felt so wild. This match felt wild for quite a lot of its duration. Another one of my favorite moments was Spears distracting the referee in the ring a little bit later on while Moxley was on the outside recovering, and then Moxley just got absolutely shoved into the ring steps by Tully, who charged across the ringside area and just pushed him into the steps. It was so sneaky and heelish, but it was brilliant at the same time. And after a really, really intense match, maybe the most intense match of the night, despite its kind of ragged feel at times, we got a nice finishing sequence with Spears hitting the Ushigoroshi because, again, Tully had stuck his nose in and helped gain the advantage. But then, when he went for the Death Valley Driver, Moxley reversed that and was able to hit the paradigm shift and pick up a big victory. But he wasn't allowed to celebrate for very long because here came Kenny Omega down the ramp, and obviously Moxley and Omega hate each other ever since Moxley's debut at Double or Nothing. Omega's got with him, right, a barbed wire baseball bat and a barbed wire broomstick because he's the cleaner. Not even a broomstick, it's a full broom wrapped in barbed wire. He throws the bat to Moxley. Moxley looks at it, picks it up. It looks like they're going to have a massive hardcore brawl. Then Pac just runs out and just clocks Omega in the back of the head with the edge of a steel chair. And Moxley's quite honourable. He doesn't attack Omega when he's down. He actually looks annoyed at Pac for getting in the way. And all the possible matchups this could set up is really intriguing and exciting to me. This gets a B+. I'm slightly worried for Shawn Spears. I really thought he was going to beat Cody at All Out, and even though he didn't, it was still a really good match. I didn't for a second think he was going to beat Moxley here. This one suffered a little bit from being predictable, even though it was really intense at times and a really fun match. It does only get a B+ because of that. And I just worry for Spears a little bit in the long term. Like, where's he going to find his footing? When's he going to start picking up some victories here and there? I know not everyone can win all the time, but Spears does seem to have failed to deliver on a lot of the promises he made in kayfabe. Tully was great again though, it's great to see him, and I'm really excited for the possibility of maybe Moxley versus Pac, or even a triple threat with Moxley, Pac, and Kenny Omega. And finally, the main event, Dustin Rhodes and Hangman Page teaming up to take on Chris Jericho, the AEW champion, and Sammy Guevara. Jake Hager accompanied the heel team to ringside because he's the heavy, I suppose, and he would get involved later on. But for the first half of this match, it followed the classic structured, I guess, sequence of events. It was like the faces came out strong, then the heels used sneaky tactics to wear them down, and then eventually there was a hot tag. Dustin was cleaning house, the crowd were going wild. It was all classic, stuff we've seen a million times before, but it was done really, really well. A nice mix of experience and youth in this match. Things broke down eventually, and Hangman Page hit a huge moonsault from the top onto Sammy Guevara on the outside, but as he turned in celebration, he was just taken out by a monstrous running clothesline from Jake Hager, presumably with the referee distracted by the actual match going on inside the ring. Meanwhile, Dustin was setting up Jericho for the Shattered Dreams in the corner. Guevara ran in and tried to blindside Dustin, but he didn't get the memo, did he? That Dustin's the natural, and he sensed him coming. Big snap power slam, really awesome. And then, the heels did some heelish stuff and managed to pick up the win. Guevara grabbed the referee, pretended he was really, really injured, and then held the ref in position while Jericho was able to bloody cheat because, well, not Jericho personally, Jake Hager got in the ring, another big clothesline to take out Dustin, and then he fell victim to the Judas Effect back elbow, and the dirty heels pick up a dirty victory, a tainted victory, and I hope you're pleased with that, lads. I hope you're proud of what you've done. After the match, the heels commence a 3-on-1 beatdown on Dustin Rhodes, but Page tries to even the odds and kind of takes Jake Hager away from the melee. They have a really intense brawl on the outside. Page at one point just hurtling a steel chair into the face of Jake Hager, who thankfully got his hands up to protect himself. They brawled up the ramp and to the back, and this could possibly set up a match for the future, maybe even at Full Gear, Hangman Page versus Jake Hager. I think I'd quite like to see it. Yeah, why not? Anyway, it was still 2-on-1 back in the ring with Dustin Rhodes getting beaten up, but the lights went down and here was his baby brother to save him, Cody Rhodes, taking out Sammy Guevara with a crossroads. But it wasn't over yet. There were more twists in the tail. Santana and Ortiz hit the ring and took out Cody Rhodes, and then MJF came down to save him. And this is where it looked like MJF was going to turn. If this was the latter days of WCW, they would have blown their... Can I say that? They'd have pulled the trigger too early by now. MJF would have turned and it kind of wouldn't have been as effective. But MJF actually triple swerved us. It looked like he was going to save Cody, then it looked like he was going to turn on him and join the Inner Circle, but then he started hitting members of the Inner Circle, and the crowd popped huge for him, and he looked so smug about it as well. In fact, he was so smug, he celebrated for too long, and Jericho hit him with a code breaker, but then the Young Bucks came along to finally properly turn the tide in the favour of the babyfaces. They stood tall, but Jericho had bailed to the outside, and he was celebrating on the ramp with his title, and it basically looked like he was going to have the last laugh. And then, like a scene from a Day to Remember music video, Darby Allin skateboarded down the ramp, leapt off and clotheslined him and beat him up with his skateboard. And I'm not reading this from the fantasy diary of a 14-year-old emo boy. This is legitimately how Dynamite ended. This match and post-match melee gets a B+. It was a little bit similar to last week's without a big debut in the form of Jake Hager, of course, but I still found it entertaining. And I thought that Darby Allin's bit at the end was really funny and really good. So I'm excited for that match next week between Darby and Jericho. I'm just worried that it might be a little bit too predictable. Overall, the show gets an A-. I thoroughly enjoyed it from top to bottom. I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was better than last week's, actually. I thought it was a stronger follow-up. I haven't had a chance to watch NXT yet, but I've heard that that was also a strong show, so I can't wait to check that out. But who do you think won this week's war between AEW and NXT? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know what you thought about Dynamite in general. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.